So I'm gonna be talking about consciousness and unconsciousness, and it's very important to understand why. Because when we understand consciousness, we start understanding how we think, and not only that, we come to understand how we think, how we become aware, unaware, and how we can have more free will. We like to think that as a human we have a lot of free will, but in honestly, when you start studying psychological type, you will start to understand that we are really a creature of habits. We have habits every day, so we wake up and go and do things, and we think in a certain way, and we have like develop a set of habits. But when we understand conscious and the unconscious influences, we can have control of our life. We become more, in a sense, a more better driver, um, because now we become aware of the different paths we can take. Whereas before we only perhaps knew two paths because we are in a sense, in terms habitual being, so on. But I'm going to represent to you Carl Jung's model of consciousness. And when I see conscious, I mean that we become conscious of something when we are aware of something. And Carl Jung, he had a medicine background basically, and he further on went to develop the psychoanalytical approach. He sort of he understood the consciousness. He dissected the consciousness in a very analytical approach. I mean, analytical means pieces by pieces. So he managed to understand the consciousness pieces by pieces, because we, when we don't or haven't sort of learned psychological typing and so on, we come to understand consciousness as a big thing, and we're just aware and so on. But once you come to study consciousness, you start to see that basically there are different parts to them. They have different roles to them, and so on. So knowing this will basically make you able to, honestly, make you able to sort of become, like I said, a better driver in terms of your life, where you want to go, and how to approach things, and how to come to understand others, etc. But so Carl Jung, because he had a medicine background, he viewed the consciousness in the same way that a biologist would view biology. So what happens is that if you have a doctor, for example, so they see the world, from a biological approach through cells, to genes, through DNA, and so on. But what happens is that before a child is born, we have a set of cells, and this set of cells starting specializing. They start moving together, form a complex set of cells, which is larger than the first part. What happens is that they specialize. So one set of cells becomes a heart, another special set of cells becomes the liver, and so on. And Carl Jung also viewed consciousness the same way. So if you view consciousness as a big ball, what happens is that once we become from, let's say, 6 to 12, our consciousness, so we are born unconscious. We don't know, we are not aware of our surrounding. We don't even know what's going on. We are just basically roaming around, more or less. And it's not to say that kid doesn't interact and so on. And so I have to oversimplify things a bit here. And so what happens is that we have the kid is born unconscious, not knowing about the environment. Say unconscious. But what happens is that we are sort of born with 8 psychological tools, 8 ways of understanding and seeing the world. So I'm going to draw them here. So you can see them as different cells. So 1, 4, 5, 6, 7, different cells. And what happens is that once you grow, the cells start slowly to specialize. So they start moving outwards from being unconscious to conscious. So what happens is that they start moving outwards. So before they were unconscious, now they become conscious. From the year 6 to 12, a kid will start questioning often, or that's when they start to start forming their own view world. You can see they start to understand where the things are and how to do stuff and so on. So they become conscious of the environment. They are no longer a they're no longer a kid with habit. They become in a sense a kid with a will. They have a more of a free will. And by the 6 to 20, no, by the 12 to 20, another consciousness started moving outwards again. So what happens is that now our unconscious becomes smaller and smaller, and we start forming consciousness. And what happens is that, as you can see, we have free will towards this now. This we don't really have free will. It sort of control us more than we control it. And why I say this, because they are not. How can you control something you are not aware of? You can't really. So they are sort of informing the person, but the person is not really in control of it, or in a sense knows about it, what influences is doing. But these cells, or these consciousness, we have formed psychological to understand the world, and we obtain free will with this one. So while we grow, they start moving outwards. And this is the differentiation of um, consciousness. We only get, at least from a psychological type perspective, we only get free will by two of them, maybe three, and fourth of them is really standing between the unconscious and conscious. So we still have four which is gonna be in our unconscious, which we don't really have too much control about, and so on. So that's enough for consciousness. But I can just make an example maybe, is that, like I said, when a kid, they are not aware of the environment. When they become 6 years old, if there's psychological tool, let's say, depending on which personality type you are. Let's say, for example, if you have a INTJ, what happens is they form what's called introverted intuition. Introverted intuition. And let's say their second function, the one they grow the next, is extroverted thinking. Extroverted thinking. So what happens is that once they grow introverted intuition, it means that they will see a lot of things in images in their head. And so they're gonna play with images in their head, and they're gonna play with their thoughts basically. And they will have a different view from most people, because having developed introverted intuition first is, at least in females, as the most rarest personality type, is very rare to meet an INTJ, I have to be honest. That's why they can, in a sense, feel outside the social environment, feel a bit outside. They have this grand view of the world, and what happens is that they often develop their own perspective, their own ideas in how to understand the world. So you can already understand how this kid, for example, can be viewed differently in the school, and where perhaps a different learning set should be more appropriate for them. And once they go 12 to 20, they start using extroverted thinking. So they start talking out loud. And when they make decision, extroverted thinking, they talk out loud. They are talking as they are making decision. And people often think this is their point of view, but they are not really. They are just talking in order to process their decision making. So, but I'm going to talk about this more a bit later. But I think the point was to get this across, that we start as unconscious with an inborn potential. Then we grow and we start specializing different intelligence, different type of awareness, and so on. So yeah, this is just a pre-video before I want to move to the energy pattern and so on. So thank you for now.